Fertility Feelings podcast. Today we have a very special guest. I'm so excited for this one.
What if I hold my microphone like I'm on stage the whole time?
I think you should. I think our YouTube viewers would like that.
Oh yeah, we're on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube.
Yeah, if you ever want to just see us and listen to us. Isn't that more what the world wants?
Not only, it's not enough just to see us. We want you to listen to us and see us at the same time.
I do my hair for these things. And that's only for a special occasion when I do my hair. So anyway, today we have, I feel like the rare opportunity. Like when do you get
this
to...
is exciting. I'm excited about this.
Are you not excited about other ones?
I'm always excited, but this one feels like, I don't know why. It feels like infertility doctors are like, ooh.
I know.
Ooh, maybe because it's like we only talked to infertility doctors when we were going through our journey. It was like, okay, you go to this special hospital.
Exactly, this special room.
Special wing, and then there comes the REI to talk. So it's like we just get to just chat with one.
I know, so it's awesome. So today we have Dr. Lauren Rubal. She is an Orange County fertility doctor, and I just feel so honored. I feel like we could pick her brain. I'm just so excited. I feel like that's a rarity that you get to actually talk to your fertility doctor. So we're so excited. And at the very, very end, I ask her the question. Do you know what question I ask her?
It's got to be the famous gray hair question.
Famous gray hair question.
I don't know if it's famous, but
it's famous. And she answers, kind of. She answers.
Have you ever thought that maybe it's just everyone gets gray hair and there's not?
Okay. I have more gray hair at a young age than anyone that I know. And I cannot help.
Anyone that you know? I have no hair. That's another special guest for the YouTube people.
Yep.
No hair.
Gray hair, no hair. We got problems. It's a long list of our problems. So we're so excited. We're so excited.
Yeah. Dr. Lauren Rubal, we're really happy for you to hear our conversation. We talked to her about, and we asked her, what does it feel like to be a reproductive endocrinologist in this field, helping people and walking through these crazy journeys with people? What does that feel like? It's a really awesome conversation, and we're excited for you to hear it.
Yep. So here it is. Today is an awesome day. We have Dr. Lauren Rubal with us, and we're very excited that you are here. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to speak with you guys, and I just think the world of what you're doing and of your journey and both of you. So thank you.
We are right back at you. We are such a fan of you. Okay.
We have a connection actually to Dr. Lauren, right? What do you want us to call you? Dr. Lauren, Dr. Rubal?
Yeah, what do you want us to call you?
I was going to say Lauren, but you can call me Dr. Lauren. Yeah.
Perfect.
Our infertility journey intersected with a little bit of where you were and what you were doing. So why don't you just start by telling us who you are, maybe a little bit, I don't even know if you know, if we know your backstory, how you got involved in what you're doing and all that.
And did Doug tell you that it was you or Dr. Rosenkrantz when we were at Kaiser? It was you or Dr. Rosenkrantz, and we got placed with Dr. Rosenkrantz. I didn't choose. It was just but you were the other one. You could have been our doctor.
I know.
It was that close.
I know he did. He did let me know that. And I was, it seems like a lifetime ago being at Kaiser. But yeah, let me tell you a little bit about, but I know Dr. Rosenkrantz very well. He was my work husband for many, many years.
Yes, I love him too. He was great.
So in doing REI, it is a bit, I hate the word journey. I feel like I'm watching The Bachelor, but I say it all the time, unfortunately. So, I think that in terms of doing REI, I always knew that I wanted to be a doctor. My mom tells me from young age, always thought I'd be a pediatrician. That wasn't actually my passion when I finally got to med school. And then, reproductive endocrinology is a subspecialty. So we do a 3-year fellowship after 4 years of residency in OBGYN. And after I came out, I was at Kaiser Permanente in Orange County, where we get to care. It was a wonderful job, get to care for a lot of different patients. But also got to focus in and do in vitro fertilization at a fertility center in town. And
can I just even ask a quick question in there? So how do you get started? This is a nerdy question, but how do you get started in reproductive endocrinology? Is that you're a sophomore in high school and you're like, I just wanna, or is it I want to be a doctor? Because literally, if you were to ask me as a college student, fertility specialist, I'm like, I don't know, is that like an acupuncturist or is that like a physical therapist? I didn't realize it's like brain surgery. It's that's that difficult to get. It's that much schooling. It's because it's such a huge thing, right?
It is, I think, in the sense that, by the way, we are the biggest nerds ever. So we love, so yes, I think that, so science nerds, bring it on. But yeah, I think that it involves any subspecialty really involves that even more so. Like I said, it's another additional 3 years. I think that in terms of how I knew I wanted to do it, again, always knew I wanted to be a doctor, but I really love the endocrinology part of it. And I could talk about this for about an hour, so please cut me off.
But give us the short, what does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean, right? That's the hormones. And so it's the connections and how the body talks to its organs. And so there's 3 different ways of communicating. The fast is neural, right? You have a neurological impulse and you get that signal really fast.
Light switch, yeah.
Medium, yeah, yeah, exactly. Medium's endocrine system, which is hormones, which all it is just messengers going from one part to another. And then the slow system is the immune system.
Okay.
And so that has like how it changes over time, right? And I remember being in medical school and seeing this pathway of all of the feedback loops and how the brain sends out signals and how the organ responds and quiets down the brain, and just feeling like it was in the Nancy Drew books that I devoured when I was little, and like trying to figure out what was happening. That was the culprit, the one who did it. And so that was like the beginning of it. And then I think that it's just such a great mix of the medical part and the office space and really having to do the digging deep and finding out what's going on, because there's so many different causes. It combined with surgical procedures, which is hands-on and really fulfilling because a lot of the time you get immediate results. And so the combination of the two, and then really importantly, what we're going to talk about today is the emotional aspect and really having such a deep relationship with your patients. And I loved that too.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I knew
it's an amazing thing to do and a career path to choose. And I think it's infertility in and of itself is not talked about a ton. It's like even the sphere of people who are serving that community aren't talked about a ton. So I love it. Bring awareness to all of it.
Yes. So you were at Kaiser, and then what was that like? Because you're obviously not at Kaiser now, right?
Yeah. Listen, Kaiser was wonderful. I think what was great about Kaiser is that it really, you have the ability to really touch so many people and try to help as many people as possible, because it is such a large healthcare system. Fertility care is covered for a large portion of it, depending on what plan people have. And it was always a lot of activity, which I like. So you're seeing lots of people, you're doing cycling patient, you're monitoring, see I did doing too, monitoring cycling patients in the morning. And then you see a lot of different consults, office-based procedures. And then when I was doing in vitro fertilization, running back and forth from the fertility center to and fro, and caring for patients over there. So that world was wonderful, but I actually made a decision for many, many different reasons. But my passion really is in a more restorative approach to fertility and to reproductive health. And I believe that.
What does that mean?
Yeah. What do you mean by that?
Oh yeah, good question. What I mean by that is, listen, there's a role for all types of treatments, and there's a role for in vitro fertilization. Absolutely, that goes without saying. Okay, and it's had so many benefits for so many people. But with that being said, I feel personally that a lot of the techniques and care that may have been focused on more in the pre-IVF era has fallen a little bit to the wayside in some ways. And that some of the diagnoses and treatments that previously were very much a part are just, at times, we just kind of say, okay, well, let's go to IVF. Again, could be the right decision for the right couple. But for so many couples, they want to avoid some of the aggressiveness of in vitro fertilization or even intrauterine insemination or IUI.
Yeah.
And that's where my world is. That's where my niche is. That's where my passion is really trying to heal the body, to restore the natural cyclicity and rhythms of the body so that we can help people get pregnant as naturally as possible. And it may not work for everyone, but I think it can only help.
Yeah, it's
That's
a more
awesome.
holistic way of thinking about it.
That's exactly right. It is a very holistic way, and it really relies on, I'm just finding so much value in integrative medicine in that world.
Mm.
Mhm.
And I'm really excited about, I'm training in it, and it's really so excited. I think it's the future, you guys.
Yeah. Okay.
Ooh.
All right. We're at the forefront of the
I know,
future.
I like that.
We're getting the
Why,
ground floor.
can I ask you a logistical question? Just because, I mean, for me, being like a man in this space and not knowing a ton about, like learning about it literally as I was going through it, why is infertility care separate from a hospital, separate from the traditional healthcare system? It's like it steps outside of, you can do an IUI at Kaiser, but then you had to go and do it. If you wanted to do IVF, that was at a separate clinic. And maybe there's a really long answer, but I don't know. Why the divide at that point?
I think that's a really complex answer. I
Okay.
agree. And I think that it, in the sense that it varies from place to place, from hospital system to hospital system, from
Okay.
insurance to insurance, from
Right.
tier in each insurance to
Mhm.
insurance, as
Okay,
you guys
yeah.
know, and as everyone who's listening knows, the amount of coverage that you can achieve for fertility care is so dramatically different. And that therefore influences who's going to be caring for you and where you have to go. Right.
Yeah.
And so, and even from state to state. So for
Right.
example, New Jersey is a mandated state, right? So infertility is much more, is covered in that state as opposed to California, which
Right.
is not.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So maybe that's a basic answer to to
No,
another.
yeah. I think again, just not the infertility world seems a lot of times covered up and not understood. So just trying to understand it more and bring light to it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have a feelings question. Can we?
Yes, let's jump into the feelings.
Yeah, my feelings question is just this: is for me when again for when we showed up to our clinic to do IVF, there was a element of me where I already felt stressed, traumatized, worried. I was already really overwhelmed as a person because it had taken us so long to even realize that there was an issue. It had taken us so long to do some of the first treatments, and I was like already in a fragile state. How much do you take into consideration, or what's your experience been with working with people who are in that fragile state when they walk in the door? Like, what's it like to walk with someone through such a difficult journey like IVF or like any of these procedures to try to get pregnant, knowing that they're coming in the door, I mean, in a lot of ways, stressed out, worried, fearful, all those things.
Absolutely. And I think that, well, first of all, again, I think that's part of why we're in this field. I know that's, for me personally, that's part of the reason, because I really love, like I said, just holding people's hand and helping to provide some insight as that, first of all, this is so normal what you are feeling and experiencing. And as I tell every patient, I think we've probably talked about this before, but my goodness, it is so different than going to the doctor and getting blood pressure medication. Like, you are touching upon not just a medical diagnosis, but you're touching upon people's sense of self, of their womanhood or manhood, of the thoughts and their expectations for their lives, and having
Preach.
how seriously, right?
Preach.
And it really is just goes to every single aspect. And I tell my patients, I'm like, honestly, I feel like the medical part is the easiest to work through in some ways,
Right.
because the mental and emotional and spiritual component of all of this is, I think, the hardest part to be able to come to peace with in a lot of ways.
I think that is going to be so good for the soul for our listeners to hear that infertility or a fertility doctor RA would say that about them, that's what they're going through. Because I think sometimes it feels like that some doctors don't even think about that, or think that it's traumatic, or think that it's anxiety provoking or anything like that. What would you feel like is the most common feeling that you feel from your patients with going through this, or some feelings?
I would say sadness and anxiety.
Yeah.
So absolutely. And that's what the data shows as well. And that's why I actually also, when I talk to patients, we focus so much on their feelings. And what I say to everyone, the number one overarching goal is I want us to manage our stress as much as possible. And then I
That's
follow
amazing.
that up very quickly by saying that stress does not cause infertility, and it's not their fault that they feel stressed, because,
Yeah, right.
I think that that's the
Yeah,
natural
yeah.
inclination
Yeah.
is to say, oh my goodness, great. Now this is something else I have to feel guilty about because I'm in so much stress. But
Right.
I'm saying that to empower people, not to give them something else to have to kind of check off or get through that day. But I'm really saying that because even though we all have stress and stressors, it's really hard to manage the stressors that we have. I get it. What we can do on a daily basis is try to recenter ourselves and find something that you enjoy, be it meditation or religion.
Mhm.
Acupuncture is a great place. This is where it comes.
I did acupuncture.
Yeah.
Yay! Yeah, I love acupuncture. I think that there's absolute benefits. Exercise, kill two birds with one stone. Being out in nature. I always say vacation. Haha. This 2020.
Right. I know. So sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of exactly what we encourage people to do too, as well, is even just when you start the journey, realizing that what you're about to go through or what you're currently going through might be more stressful than something that you've gone through in the past. It might even graduate into slightly traumatic at times, through miscarriage or some of these like failed transfers or whatever it may be. And knowing that that's going to happen, there is a resilience that we can fight to build up so that we can, survive just going through the stressful event of infertility, for sure.
Yes, that's so important. It's so important. And it's so important for your relationship with your partner
Yes.
Yeah.
as well, because I think that is very much another aspect that takes a hit.
Yeah.
Right?
I was so grateful that Doug and I were on the same page.
Yeah.
And now that I'm
Yeah.
in this world, I'm like, oh, there are people that aren't on the same page or want to do IVF again or don't want to stop. And so I was so grateful that we were on the same page. I feel like that's rare.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for me, it was like, I didn't even know what I wanted. Going into it, I didn't know what I wanted the outcomes to be. I was just like really learning as I went through it. And I think I didn't even realize how stressful and there were definitely some traumatic moments throughout our infertility journey. And I didn't realize that going into it. It just felt very like, okay, very procedural. And then it was like, gosh, this stuff is hitting me so hard, which in a lot of ways is why we created Uniquely Knitted and what we're doing now. But it's so encouraging to hear you say that is on like your mind and on your heart, that like taking into consideration what people are going through and having that holistic view of them.
I think that people don't, I have to tell you something, and may sound a little funny, but I think that sometimes our patients don't realize how much we care about them. Like I will go home and think about, I know maybe that sounds a little,
No.
that
sounds
I don't
good.
think it
like
does.
that.
I would
Yeah.
want you to think about me because I'm thinking about me a lot in this process.
It's true that we go home and like we have to give bad news, and like literally like you just go home and it really affects us. It really does. Or well, patients will come back to me and they're like, this is so and so. I don't know if you remember me. I'm like, of course. Oh my gosh, how can I not remember you? Of course I remember you. So I think it's funny how people assume that maybe we don't think about them. We think about them so much.
Right.
That's
so
amazing.
I want to ask you, what is it like for you? What are the feelings that it stirs up? It's like, okay, the client anxious, dealing with all that, the stress, and then what is that like for you? The feelings.
Maybe even like, what's it like to tell someone that bad news of, somebody didn't work or
That's the hard part. I think that when they come in initially, I am there to try to be their cheerleader and to also, like I always tell all my patients, there is always hope. And I'm really there to instill that hope because I truly believe that we're not in control. I'm not in control. There's always should be hope is my thought.
Right.
With that being said, so that part isn't quite as hard because I feel like at the end of the day, I'm helping them because they're in this dark abyss. And it's like, okay, there's a light. I think the hardest part for me personally is having to give those conversations where we're giving really bad news. And it really, I think that part is absolutely, you just take on that pain and that emotion. And I think that, I know I've left those conversations and you just have to kind of like sit in a quiet place for a little bit and, reflect on it. It really, again, we care so much. I know that it might sound a little sappy, but we do. And I think that that it's important. What you're saying is that we also have to kind of watch for our mental health. And I think that, and being able to say, okay, again, let's go back to the hope. Let's go back to, this was a hard discussion, but how can we use this to empower ourselves to make the decisions that we feel most at peace with? And that's one of my mantras. It's even though we're in the midst of this overwhelming and situation that we can't control completely, how can you put yourself back in the driver's seat with what you're faced, and make the decisions? Again, you weigh the pros and cons of each approach, and then you too make that choice that you can feel and say, we chose to do this moving forward. And that, I think, provides closure and comfort.
Yeah, I love that, because sometimes it feels like you're wanting to just follow the doctor's advice. Like, I don't know, what do you think we should do? Because I don't know what to do. You know what I mean? So I love that approach of like you in the driver's seat, because then you can make the choice for yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. I like that.
Okay, I have a question. I think a lot of people feel trapped a little bit by their desire to have a baby, and it like keeps them coming back to it. And so they're kind of like, I'll do anything, that like sense of desperation.
Sell my soul.
Yeah. Or I'll pay that desperation. Like this has to work. What, from your perspective, as someone who's, from the doctor's perspective, what's something that they need to keep in mind from an emotional standpoint? How can they get back in that driver's seat? Like, what are some of the things they can do? Is it time? Do they need some time to think about it? Is it, do they really need to know their options? It might be kind of a tough question, but how can they get back in that driver's seat?
That's such a good question. That is the question.
Yeah,
I know.
The question.
Yeah. Let's solve it right now on the podcast.
I know. That would be amazing. I think that it's not easy, first of all. I think that you have to really listen and sit with yourself. And I come from a faith-based background. And so to me, you have to really, if you are faith-based, you have to kind of, I think that can be such a comfort sometimes, because there are different forms of motherhood, and there are different forms and ways of expressing that desire and that love that you have in your heart to give to someone. It's not going to lessen the pain of what you're going through. But I think that if we, again, sublimate it and we try to bring good to this pain and sorrow of what we're dealing with, I think that it can really be life-changing. And at the very least, maybe not for your life, but maybe for someone else's. And so this spiritual motherhood component, I think, I've seen helpful for people in some ways. And I think that also talking to your spouse and really, or your partner, and really just being present with them, and again, making it about you as a team, can be so helpful, because it can feel otherwise very isolating. So maybe just
ding, ding,
for
ding,
me,
ding, ding.
social, So yes, what'd you say?
I said ding, 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 ding. Yes.
It's such a, like, finding a support group. Like, there's so many great places out there these days that the internet, social media has opened up so much good, and really finding people who understand that part of it, and who you can just unload and unleash that heaviness. And I think in some ways can really be helpful, as opposed to bottling it all up. That's when it's the hardest, it feels like.
What is your advice to someone of when they should, it's so hard, but I feel like I get this question a lot of like when to move on. Like they're always DMing us, like, when did you and Doug know to move on? And we had a very bleak diagnosis. So I think in a way it was not easier because that was not fun at all. But I think some people, especially with undiagnosed infertility, and they don't know, those people are just, it's so hard. It's so hard because they don't know when to move on. Is there advice?
Yeah, that's tough.
I know. It's like, is there advice on from a doctor's perspective of what, or maybe what feeling, I don't know, like when to move on.
I
know, it's so hard.
I'm not the best. It's super hard. It is hard, because I think that, again, I have to preface this, that part of what I'm about to say is different from what I think I would have said when I was in my classically trained world of REI, doing a very stereotypical REI job.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And
Uh-huh.
so with that being said, especially for the world of unexplained infertility,
Mhm.
I think, again, there is so much that still can be explored. And this is a little bit different than what you're asking. And
That's okay.
again, it depends on the patient. You need to have a doctor that you feel a rapport with, that you trust. And I say that all the
Yeah.
time because this is not black and white. There is so much gray. And
I
even
like that.
in
Yeah.
the worst of times, you need to have someone that you know fought for you and did everything in their power to give you the most optimized situation. That's in our control. Okay. So that's number one. Number two, I think that kind of hand in hand with that is that it's never a bad idea to get a second opinion, to get another.
Mm.
I always encourage, I would never be offended by that. I think that the more brains, the better. If you feel like you've almost reached a wall at some point, then maybe a fresh set of eyes could be helpful, because everyone has a different approach to this world, in medicine in general. Third, I would say that, again, for moving on, I think that it can be very helpful to, I always go back to this, weigh the pros and cons of each option you're faced with. So for example, if you are being told you have severe diminished ovarian reserve, which is a fancy saying low egg number, right?
That's what I have.
Yes, thank you. And so for someone like that, for like you, and you're being told, oh my goodness, okay, how are all the ways I can get pregnant? Of course, spontaneously, if you're still ovulating, that can always happen. You can adopt, right? You can adopt a child or embryo. You can have in vitro fertilization with your own eggs or with someone else's eggs, an egg donor, or you can do medications to increase egg number and potentially couple them with an intrauterine insemination, right? Those are the options, right?
Right.
But then you have to really dig deep into each of those options and say, okay, what is number one? I need to know my prognosis for each of those options. And then number two, that's a pro potentially for some and not a pro for others.
Right.
But then what are the cons for my partner and me in each of those options?
I like that.
Yeah.
Right. So some people I talk to, it's so couple dependent. Like some couples are like, I just want the baby, and I'm open to whomever that may be with whatever genetics that may be. And that's number one, is that I just really want to have that child right away. And so for that couple, they may say, okay, donor egg might be the approach that I would go with. Other couples say, for me, it's the most important that it's my own genetics. And that's a very important part for me. And so that's going to drive their approach, and they have to understand the cons to that approach too. But again, it's empowerment. And so I don't know that I answered that question.
No, you
I
did.
think
And
you did.
this reminds me of something in our journey. I remember at the end of IVF, because we had only one egg at the end after all that to push or whatever they say. And I remember when that didn't work and that didn't work, that we had a conversation. And I remember you for the first time was like, that was hard for me.
Yeah.
That was really hard for me to watch you go through that and go through all those shots. And you were the one that was like, I don't know if I can do that again.
Yeah, it was like
I don't know if I can, you know what I mean? I don't know if you want to speak into that.
No, I think it was exactly that. It was like, I don't know if this was the right way to say it at the time, but it was like, I didn't like that, and not that people were ill, were wrong to us, or, the process wasn't right. It was just that I didn't like that was really difficult for me. And it was like the first time I feel like I ever really voiced that,
And it's so focused on the woman most of the time. So I think that was helpful in me making the decision, because I kind of felt like it was on me. Because it was like, well, what do you want to do? It's your body, it's your whatever. And that was helpful for me, even though it sounded, maybe some people would think that sounds harsh, but it's like, it was like almost relieving to me to have you be like, that was really hard for me too. And that's what you're talking about, the partner thing, to like talk to your partner. And, that really helped me kind of move on to adoption.
When you were talking, when you were bringing up all those options, it literally took me back even in some ways to when we had all of those options. And this is my question for you is, after I'm listening to that, I always wonder what role does our emotional state, does all of our feelings play in this process of growing our family and infertility and all these different options? Where does the emotional aspect come into it? And it made me think, as you were talking, how difficult it would be to make those decisions when you're incredibly stressed out or when you're like in a state of panic, you know, if you're panicking about, has to work, or you're just fighting for things, it's going to be hard to be in that situation where you have all of these things laid out. So that's my question to you is, what role do you think when you have all these options in front of you, you're trying to navigate all of it, what role does emotions play? Do our feelings play in this process?
Oh, I think that the better question is, I don't think is there any couple who doesn't have,
Yeah.
who can look at this purely scientifically? But that's the thing.
Ooh, that's good. That's so true. Cause I think I thought we could do that.
Yeah.
I thought we could be just scientists, but it's not possible.
Yeah.
It's impossible. This field is not, I mean,
yeah.
I think that this field is not just science, right? And so I'm sorry, but we don't have 100% chance of pregnancy. It is, again, we are not in control. And that's my belief about it. And I think that you can't and that's why I tell people, I'm like, okay, do you want the pure medical answer or do you want the reality answer? Because we don't live in a bubble. We don't live in this vacuum of research and literature. That's not reality for us. And our emotions are coloring all of this. And so, I think that you're absolutely right, Doug. It's impossible to that's what is so hard, because it really heightens the, you're getting to this point. You're like, I don't know, especially when you feel like you're out of time and you're out of some options in some way, and you're in this corner in a lot of ways. And how do you try to calm down your emotional state enough to make a decision that, again, you can look back upon and not feel regret about?
Yes.
And I think that's very important to try to keep that at your mind. And again, that team, I think the team approach is so important. It makes things easier, because again, also for regret later on.
Yes.
You don't
right.
And for me, I wanted to give it everything I had. It's like, you think I should do acupuncture? Great. You think I should do that? Great. Because that's how I wasn't going to live with the regret of like, it's like, I just want to try it one time to see if it worked. So I think it's the science and your emotional state too. Because the percentages that Dr. Rosenkrantz gave us were not high. And so I think that was helpful to be like, oh, okay, the science is telling me this, but then also what does my emotional state look like? And I think that's a good practical advice. What is the science and your emotional state? That's when you can kind of know when to move on to other options or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so true in so many different ways. Okay, gosh. Okay, I thank you so much. If we were to ask you a big question, okay, kind of like an impossible question to answer.
Oh, those are the big questions.
Yeah.
You thought you were done. You're not done.
Well, I think my fear in doing a podcast about infertility and feelings was that did you just hit your head on the microphone?
I'm sorry. Podcast people. That was my ear.
I think one of my fears in doing a podcast about infertility and feelings was that, people who are going through the process of trying to grow their family would look at what we're doing as an aside, as like, there's the science of getting pregnant over here, and you probably should deal with your feelings over here, and that's kind of like, that's a good add-on. But I've always thought that they're deeply intertwined, and like part of that holistic approach, even that you were saying. So here's a big question is, if you were to give advice to someone who's like, in the middle of doing all of this, what's your, like, from your RE perspective, what's your like push for them? What's kind of like your view of what they should be doing?
I am so glad you asked me this question, because this is a lot of what I talk about with many of my patients, because it is integral. Your feelings are integral. Guess what? Steroid hormones, and where a lot of the signaling comes from, is the brain. There are literally receptors in your brain that respond to estrogens and progesterones, and stress levels can affect changes in the signaling that's supposed to go to your ovaries, not just for ovulation, that's quite important, but also that may impact egg quality. There's a whole system in your brain called, there's this molecule called kisspeptin. It's kind of like the boss of the system that drives ovulation and the growth and development of eggs. That sits on top. That's completely impacted by stress.
Wow.
And the stress.
Wow.
Absolutely. It's also impacted, by the way, by nutrition. And there's a whole other pathway through leptin, if you guys have heard these words. So cortisol and leptin are absolutely playing a role in our reproductive system. And this is so I think you're right. It's hard to focus on that because it feels like there's already a million things that you have to focus
Right.
on. Like, let alone like doing medications. My goodness, that's like a 2-hour process. It probably feels like that first night. I'm sure.
Right. Oh,
Right,
totally.
right.
And it's such a big
Yeah.
deal. Such a big deal. It's like I
Yeah.
have all my pads and all my
Exactly
things.
at the right time.
Yeah.
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 Exactly. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I couldn't even sometimes pick what I wanted for dinner. And then it would be like, oh, do we want to move on to IVF? It's like, you know what I mean? It's like so hard. It's like that's why I think, and maybe you can correct me if this is wrong advice. I feel like I tell people when they come to me, and I always say I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, but it's like, take some space in between. I think with fertility, we can just go, because we're trying to chase this goal. And it's like, take some space. Like I couldn't figure out what I wanted for dinner when I was in this heightened emotional state. Or sometimes I would read a book and not even track what I was reading because I was so over here in some other land. It's like you're so heightened. It's like these are big decisions and it's okay to take a break and think about what you want to do. I think that's how you can get back in the driver's seat.
I completely agree. I agree with that. Not only when you're in the midst of treatment, take that space to recenter yourself every day. And don't be mad at yourself if you can't do it every single day, but really try to make a concerted effort. Number one, take space between treatments, I think is perfectly fine. Again, I tell my patients, remember the egg quality occurs in those few months before it's released or plucked out, whatever you're doing. And so you need to make sure that quality piece is there. That's so important. And then I think that the last thing that I would say that's really important, so hard to do, but I think that it's important to find joy in the way your life is at this moment.
Oh,
I like that.
Right?
so good.
True. It's so hard. I'm not saying it's easy. Okay. Because you're right. It becomes this all consuming goal, but we have to also live in a way where not everything is everyone's being such a good parent already, right? Everything seems to just become like about, oh, I can't have this and I can't have this, or I have to eat this way, or I have to do this because of this end goal. And it starts becoming living not in the here and now and living for this of course a wonderful goal, but still nevertheless we need to live in the here and now.
Yes.
So anyway,
I love that.
yeah.
It's so good. Yeah. And
good.
that's one of the main things that we talk about too, is being present in your reality. Just like being where your feet are is such a hard thing to do in life. And especially when you're going through something stressful.
Yeah. And just some sort of small joy, however small it is, finding joy in who you are and the life that you have now. That is so good. Okay. Here's my last question. And it has zero to do with feelings. Zero. Absolutely none.
I'm tired of talking about feelings.
I'm tired of talking about feelings. Now we're going to talk about something
science.
else. Yeah, science. Okay.
Who's my favorite Kardashian?
Yeah, I know. Where are we going to go? That would be a fantastic question. I feel like that would say a lot about a person, what their favorite Kardashian is.
Is it bad? I don't even know how many.
I don't think you would know.
Maybe?
No, it's fine.
I don't think I know that. That's actually.
I have had severe gray hair for a long time.
Okay.
I think it's tied into my fertility. My one cousin, who probably will never listen to this, I won't say her name, but she also struggles with infertility on my mom's side, and she has severe gray hair. And for some reason, I think it's attached to like my fertility hormones or something. And I threw it out on Instagram, and I had about 75 people say that they have had gray hair at a young age. They didn't have low ovarian reserve. They had, some of them did. And then of course, some of them that had low ovarian reserve didn't have gray hair. I just wonder if there is some tie. I mean, would you say I have like 70% gray hair? I mean, I have a lot of gray hair, and I'm 36 years old.
That question.
Yeah, it's like, I'm 36 years old. I just wondered if there's some sort of tie. What would you say?
That's really interesting. I have never heard of this before, first of all.
Okay.
Second of all, so I don't know the answer. I don't know if there's literature actually looking at this. Not that if it's not there, that doesn't mean that it's not real.
Right.
Necessarily, right?
Right.
But I almost wonder, I don't know enough about the hair follicle, but the only link I can make potentially is like your mitochondria, which are the energy producers in your cell.
Okay.
And could that be again, I'm totally conjecturing because I don't know enough about the hair follicle to know what makes it turn from colored to non-colored, but it would be interesting if the link could be through your mitochondria because they get shorter and shorter, the chromosomes within them. And
what is your mitochondria? Is that my hair?
in them. The mitochondria are in the cell. They're the energy supply for that
Okay.
cell.
Oh, okay.
And so there are thoughts that as they shorten, that you can have issues, for example, with egg number, like with ovarian reserve.
Okay.
So if that also makes your hair gray, maybe.
I don't know, you guys. Here we go. I
know. I want to know.
Follow-up question. I have no hair, so what does that say about me?
Yes, that's tied, Doug. That's a proven fact. Proven medical fact.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Well, if you ever know the answer, all the people would want to know.
Yes.
Okay. So interesting.
I know. And I thought I was the only one. And then I threw it out to someone and they were like, oh, I have really gray hair too. And then I put it to everybody and I had 75% of the people say they had gray hair. Some of them had PCOS, someone had endometriosis. You know, it wasn't
Maybe
just all low ovarian
infertility
reserve.
is so stressful that everyone gets gray hair, or my hair fell out. Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah, that's a good point too. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that we're going to ever have uncover the answer to this question, you guys. I feel like there might be too many.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. I just wondered. I was like, this is got to be a thing. I asked Dr. Rosencrantz too, and he said no. So I was like, oh, okay. Well, I think it is.
The
So
difference between the two of us is like, no. I'm like, well,
yeah, there's something to explore.
Yeah.
Yes.
So funny.
Dr. Lauren Rubal, how can people find you? How can
Yes.
they know about you? If they even want to get service at your clinic, what can they do?
Yeah, I mean, I have a website, so it's long, but it's my name. It's easy. So
Okay.
LaurenRubalMD.com. And then I am making a comeback on Instagram. I haven't really been excited.
The great comeback. I like that.
The great comeback.
I don't know. That's a lot of, yeah, exactly. So that the great comeback of October 2020, you got it. And so I'm on there, and then I'm on the web. I'm on Google. So
Awesome. Yeah,
certainly I'm happy to care for people.
And what city are you in? Where's your office?
Oh, it's in Newport.
Okay.
But,
California.
So California, that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Mhm.
Thank you. Orange County, California. And I've been doing a lot more telemed, which I think virtual
Ooh.
visits, which I think all of us are.
Yeah.
Could
So-
someone that doesn't live in Orange County that's not going to use you do a televisit or no?
I've been seeing patients absolutely from other parts of California, and so it's in
Oh.
California right now. But yes, so
That's
we've
cool.
been,
Very cool.
talking. Yeah, it's been really neat.
So you wouldn't be their fertility doctor, or would they come to you?
So here's, I think it depends on the patient, but a lot of the time they can be plugged in somewhere else. And so I'm also happy to, again, my role is really in integrative medicine as well. So I'm really trying to hone in and heal their bodies as a whole, optimize egg and sperm quality. And so I think, and really, again, my goal is to help them get pregnant as naturally as possible. So even though I do fertility treatment cycles, like I'll take people through an injectable cycle or oral medications and couple that with timed intercourse. I don't have to be doing that for people. Hopefully they get pregnant before then.
Oh yeah,
right?
that makes
Before they
sense.
do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's so great.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for coming on and joining us today.
Yes. Thank you
Oh.
so much.
I love the work you guys are doing. Thank you guys for everything that you're doing for people. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.